What's going on, sports fans? JD here at JD Sports Talk, and in today's video we are going to discuss the potential fits of Collin Sexton, Spencer Dinwiddie, and Richaun Holmes for the New York Knicks as the NBA offseason is full speed ahead. And I know there's a lot of excitement, adrenaline, and anxiety as we inch closer to the NBA draft on Thursday, July 29th. And I'll have the honor to be on KnicksFanTV for Knicks draft coverage. And I know CP will have some trivia games and some giveaways, so please make sure you check me out on KnicksFanTV for the draft. It should be a fun night, should be an epic night. I know I can't wait. I know you guys can't wait. So please make sure you check us out on Thursday on KnicksFanTV. I also want to take a moment to say thank you. The channel's only 15 videos in, only 2 months. And we're a few subscribers away from 1,500 subscribers. It's very humbling. Never would have thought that in such a short period of time, the channel would explode to this many subscribers. So thank you very much. Every single subscriber matters. And if this is your first time, thank you for stopping by. And I invite you to please consider subscribing. And if you do, make sure that you hit the subscribe button and you hit that notification bell, which is very important, so that you are notified every time that I drop a video. I'll also be dropping some Giants video here as the NFL training camp begins. And yeah, let's get right to it with Collin Sexton. You guys already know all the reports by now, so let's talk about the potential fit with Collin Sexton. And the first thing we are going to discuss here is spacing. What is the fit of Collin Sexton with the New York Knicks? There's been a lot of ups and downs on people's thoughts on Collin Sexton, but I do want to take a moment to show you guys here some of the spacing that Collin Sexton has had to deal with. And what you guys see here is obviously red means terrible spacing, and dark blue, which we'll get into a moment, means great spacing. So that's the very simple thing of what you're seeing here. These are the rankings of some of the players at his position that had dealt with the least amount of spacing while they were on the floor. And I think it's something very interesting of what you're seeing in front of you. When you look, you start to see the players: Collin Sexton, Darius Garland, Theo Maledon, Lonzo Ball, Shai Gilgeous, Eric Bledsoe, Stephen Curry, Beal, and Wall. How many players and teams of what you see in front of you made the playoffs? Very interesting to note, right? And you start to see how important spacing is for some of these prime players that you see on the screen. And now when we transition into what would be here, which is the dark blue, and what you would, what is termed as great spacing, look at some of the players that you see in front of you. Jamal Murray with the Denver Nuggets, Facu Campazzo, Drew Holiday, Reggie Jackson, Cameron Payne, who a lot of people have thought, have talked about being with the Knicks. Look at the career year that Cameron Payne had, and he's in this list. Chris Paul, Elfrid Payton. How about that? CJ McCollum and LaMelo Ball, who had an outstanding rookie year. You start to see the impact of what lineup spacing means to some of these talented guards. And just like I asked the question on the last slide, I'll ask the question here. How many players in front of you and how many of these teams made the playoffs? So again, this further validates the importance of when we're talking about a position in the NBA that is so important, in a position that is considered, it is a major need for the New York Knicks. You start to see the importance of putting these prime players in a position to where they have spacing to be able to orchestrate the offense and for them to be able to operate efficiently. So let's go into the Collin Sexton player card. Let's get to know Sexton a little bit. Now, Collin Sexton is 22 years old, and some of you guys already know some of these numbers that he's had, with the 24 points and the 4 assists, the 47.5% percentage from the field goal and 37% from three. Now, the interesting thing too is he shot almost 41% on the corner threes and almost 47% on open threes. Now, this is very important and interesting because when we talk about Tom Thibodeau and some of his philosophy, and in terms of the corner threes and how Thibodeau, because that is the shortest distance to shoot the threes, he likes his teams to shoot as many threes from that side. Pretty interesting that Collin Sexton was very efficient. And I think these are important numbers because it also goes further evidence in other categories of Collin Sexton being an efficient player on a bad team with bad spacing. You see a salary there at $6.3 million. Then he's eligible for a qualifying offer. So it's going to be very interesting what happens here with Collin Sexton and the New York Knicks. So we go into now the bulletin board, and my take on Collin Sexton is, as you guys saw, I think the Knicks organization, what the front office is doing at this moment is, when you have a player that young, he won't even be 23 until January of next season. So you're talking about, a portion into the season, he still is going to be 22 years old. As you saw in the slide with spacing, a lot of those players did not make the playoffs. I think you have to investigate the pros and cons. And the cons, you have to investigate why those were cons and what the Knicks organization could do to make that a pro. In other words, the thought of him having these stats on a bad team. Well, this evidence could be one of the reasons why. You want to be able to maybe give a player of that age an opportunity with a better roster. I mean, we discussed that with Julius Randle, where he was starting to develop a reputation. The Knicks had a slightly better roster, I would say, this season, but they had better coaching. And so what can Collin Sexton do in a Tom Thibodeau system with what now the Knicks are building is stability, consistency, and a culture of competitive nature. And what would that entail for Collin Sexton being in that environment? We talked about creating the culture. What would that do with future players, especially in this offseason, right? And the coaching staff, not only Tom Thibodeau, but the New York Knicks have done an outstanding job of developing a coaching staff that, their jobs is to have player development and, relate to players. Johnny Bryant is a perfect example of playing that role for the New York Knicks. And listen, I think you have to look into it. Obviously, the theme will be this offseason for all thing Knicks is, what is the price, right? What is the price? That is the major question to everything that we're going to discuss. What is the price? And does that make sense for the New York Knicks? I think, again, you have to make sure that you investigate everything with Collin Sexton, every negative, and see why that was a negative, and if that negative could become a positive in this environment. As we move on to Spencer Dinwiddie. Now, Spencer Dinwiddie, the numbers you see in front of you are numbers of 2019 and 2020. The reason I decided to show you guys those numbers is because that was his last full season. Last year he only played 3 games and got hurt. And so it's not fair to judge him on those three games. I think Spencer Dinwiddie, he's a very good player in my opinion. My question with Spencer Dinwiddie is 2 things. If you guys saw that interview, he's talking about $25 million as a starting point for the point guard market, which is something for you guys to take notice for Lonzo Ball as well, as Spencer Dinwiddie is trying to set the market at $25 million. Is that something that you want to give to a player that, when you look at his history, he hasn't been an efficient scorer? 41% during a career year, 31% from 3. And again, as we were discussing with Collin Sexton in the corner threes, with Collin Sexton shot 41%, Spencer Dinwiddie shot 30%. On one corner, he was at 29%. On the other corner, he was at 31% from three. That is not a fit for Tom Thibodeau. And you know, some of the positives with Dinwiddie is he does get to the free throw line. He had 7 free throw attempts the year where he shot 78% from the free throw line. So that's a positive. Another positive is he has played in New York. And so he understands the pressure, even though the Brooklyn Nets don't receive the necessary pressure that the Knicks get, or the Yankees, or the Giants, or the Jets. But him being in this environment, he understands what it is to play in the New York market. So do you value that more than some just stats? That's a question the Knicks front office has to answer. In my opinion, I just think that when you're constructing a roster and you want to get to the promised land, the Knicks do, I just want to build a team of just as much efficient players as possible, because when you construct a team that is efficient, it's a tough task for the defense to defend and to game plan against just one player, 2 players, when you have a team of efficient players. And he's playing a position where, you know, he's shooting attempts, he's shooting threes, he's shooting, you know, from the perimeter. You need those shots to go in at an efficient clip, and he hasn't been an efficient player throughout his career. You can look at his 3-point percentages. He's never shot over 37% from 3, and he's only shot 37% 1 year. And so I wouldn't go the Spencer Dinwiddie route. I think he's a plan B, maybe C. And let's see what happens. And let's move on to Richaun Holmes. And it's very simple with Richaun Holmes. Sources say that he wants $20 million per year. And now it's very simple with Richaun Holmes. According to league sources, as you guys see right there in front of you, Holmes is looking for a contract in the neighborhood of 4 years and $80 million. So that's a steep price to pay, but Holmes will be coveted on the open market. Whether he lands an offer in the $80 million range has yet to be seen. That figure seems above market value, but a player is worth what someone is willing to pay. If his agent gets that type of money for Holmes, then more power to him. And, you know, this is a player that is a hustle player. He's averaged over a block a game for the past, 3 seasons. So seems to be a consistent shot blocker. And, he may be looking to be a starter as well. Very similar to a Montrezl Harrell. But then that would be my concern is he's a nice player. He plays hard. He hustles. He's a solid free throw shooter, and you need that type of big man. As you see in the playoffs, every free throw matters. And so that would be a positive addition to a team. However, my concern is, him not having an expanded offensive game. Sometimes you sign a player and you invest that type of money, you get to the playoffs, and if they don't make an immediate impact, a la Montrezl Harrell, where Harrell is not a solid defender, he's not a shot blocker, and he's not a 3-point shooter, once you get into the playoffs, if you don't make an immediate impact on the floor, you become a liability. And so he's a nice player. It's actually a player I would love to have on the Knicks for a lot of the things. He's a gritty player. A lot of his stuff, screams New York. But the price, it has to make sense. You have to be careful with what you would have as a role player, because if he comes to the Knicks, he still will be considered a high quality role player. You have to be careful with what you invest into those type of players. And so I would look for it. I would investigate it, but you have to be very careful if I'm the New York Knicks on giving someone that type of money. Again, guys, thank you. Let me know what you guys think of the video. Please, comment on the comment section below. Let me know, Do you like any of these players? How about Collin Sexton, who's been a polarizing conversation in the Knicks community? Spencer Dinwiddie and Richaun Holmes. Would you pay him $20 million? Or what would you pay him? This is JD with JD Sports Talk, and I'll see you guys in the next video.